Welcome to my channel, The Limitless Infinite. My name is Loretta, or Trinity 6, and I just wanted to do this quick video today. I had this sort of, if you would call it a revelation, but I was thinking about sacred geometry. I don't think a lot about sacred geometry, but I have been thinking a lot about fractal geometry. And so I was thinking about sacred geometry because they're always talking about how basically the smaller part of a whole can be infinitely broken down into smaller and smaller parts. And sacred geometry, I believe, is really about the idea that if you have something like this and you break it down into like what I'm saying, like these 4 pieces, and then basically when you pull this part out, this can be broken into 4 pieces, and then if you pull this part out and zoom in, this can be broken into 4 pieces, and basically that goes on infinitely because you can just keep doing it, keep doing it, keep doing it. And what that is that each, I think what they say about sacred geometry is that each individual part contains all the same structure as the bigger piece. So this piece contains all the same structure as each bigger and bigger piece. So as you're fractalizing something, you're not necessarily like, I guess the best way to put it would be, you're not necessarily literally like splitting up the original whole. You're just taking a portion of it, and it's almost like zooming in and taking a and then like zooming in and zooming in. But what you'll find is the more times you zoom in on something, it's always a replica of the entire whole. So it doesn't lose anything. As you're zooming in basically on closer and closer perspectives, or basically breaking down into infinite fractional pieces, you never lose the whole. The basic structure, all the coding that you had in the whole part is still there. And so I'd been thinking about it, was like, this is so important to know, I think, as a human being. And basically, to me, what that means is that if you, and I heard in some videos too, if you kind of think of source energy, some might want to say God energy, as sort of this eternal energy source. And what I like to say is that humans, us having this human incarnation, that we are all just an infinite linear sort of reflection of this eternal energy source. So what they were saying, I think in the Law of One, that I listened to through Aaron Apke's channel, which I'll put a link down below, is that like source is like this eternal, I think he might have said infinite, but either, I always like to think of source as sort of like this eternal energy force, but that basically God, this eternal energy source, wanted to know what it would be like to have all these sort of creations of itself. It wanted to know thyself, and so in that created all these other aspects of itself in all these different forms. And so basically everything that we see in existence today all around us, we're all just what I was saying, like linear, like infinite linear representations of what source can become. And so when we think about that, it's kind of tough because we are always thinking, I think, that we are somehow some like smaller part of a bigger whole. You know what I'm saying? So when we talk about this idea of unity and oneness and people coming back together and our journey back to source, it's kind of like thinking that you're this individual tiny little part, and then we're all trying to like come back together to make this whole. And so when I was thinking about it, this honestly came up a lot with me because I had been thinking about twin flames. And I think while it's important that some people have soul journeys here in this incarnation where they are reuniting with their twin flame, and I don't want to take away from that, but it was the idea, somebody had said something that's like the idea that somehow you're not like whole without your other half. And I couldn't get past this because I was like, that just didn't resonate with me, even though you might think like it's important for your soul's journey, or maybe your soul contract or your purpose to be reunited, that the idea that somehow you're like missing some part of yourself if you weren't yet reunited with your twin flame. I was like, I just can't get past that. Like, I just feel like there's something with that just didn't resonate with me. And I kind of came to my own self-conclusion. I was like, no, there's just no way that we are all contain basically the same structure as the eternal whole that we come from. But because we're living these lives, so this is like source, and then we're all like these little infinite linear reflections of source on its journey to explore and know thyself and create, you know, we as individuals contain all the same things that source does. So even though, so if you think of source as like this eternal, sort of like in my mind, I'm envisioning this eternal spherical energy source, and then all these like individual little rays basically come out, infinite amounts of them, and that becomes all these different things that we see, that we know of, that, you know, may exist in other dimensions. But if we just like simplify this and just say that like every human on the planet is a different linear, sort of infinite linear reflection of this eternal source, because we go out, we have our little earth incarnation, we live our lives, everything here is very, in our mindset, very linear. And then when we die, we return to source, and then we go back again. So it's almost like, if you're thinking about reincarnation, it's, you know, we are birthed from source, we live our little linear life, and then we return to source, and then we're birthed from source, and we return to source. And so we're kind of like in this sort of infinite linear loop, that kind of pulls us back into source. But as, you know, that's just my personal perspective too. So, but within that, and the idea of twin flames, and the only thing I wanted to say about twin flames is that you don't need, in my perspective, you're whole. You have everything that your twin flame has. So I think some people were saying, you know, you have your like oversoul, and then you're split, and then this is like your higher self, and then maybe your higher self splits into, you know, female, and then this is the male. I think those are the right symbols. But you know, if you're thinking about it like this, you know, I think people get into this idea that's like, oh yeah, if you were coming from, you know, a higher part of your soul, and your soul as it comes into your earth incarnation, you're split into these two parts of yourself, and then this is like your, let's say your higher self, and let's say this is over soul. Sorry, my writing's like really messy. And so you might, and so the oversoul might have like, you know, these other things going on. I thought it was important to just remember that through our knowledge of sacred geometry, that this smallest piece at the very bottom, or not bottom, but like this piece that we're talking about, us right here on Earth, we contain all the same parts as the biggest one. And even if you think of the oversoul as merged with even higher source, whatever the higher source from that is, that all of these fractions, so if you think of like this is source. I'm sorry, this writing is so messy, but I don't even know if you can see that. But if you think of this as source, right? And source makes its journey as part of, you know, oversoul comes from source. So if something stems from source and it becomes the oversoul, and the oversoul, like what we were saying, like if you know you're part of a soul family, you might be all stem from the same oversoul. But this oversoul, even though it is just a portion, a part, a very small part of infinite source, it contains all the same parts that source does. And then as this breaks down into different higher selves, the higher selves still contain all the same parts as the oversoul, as is the source. And then all of our little incarnations here that we have, different worlds or different lifetimes, that we exist as the same whole part that is this. And so when you're connecting the idea of infinite fractal geometry or sacred geometry, and you understand that every time you have something really big, and every time you take a part of that, and then it's almost like you're pulling that out, and then you're zooming in on that, and then that's broken down, and you're zooming in on that you don't ever lose any quality of the whole that you started with. And so when you're really thinking about that, it helps you to understand that you are a whole being. And so you may be, it's almost like, and I like to think of it like this, like if source, or if your oversoul was like, you know, you might even say like your higher self, but basically I always like to think of it as, if you're thinking that, we'll just say oversoul is a giant crystal. Like if you thought of it as this giant faceted crystal, and as light passes through this crystal, basically what you get, if you've ever seen one like a faceted prism before, is you get all these mini like rainbows that would be littered, or not littered, but just reflected all over the wall. And so each one of those, each line of light that comes into this crystal and then is passed out a facet, gives you the little 5 color, or the 6 colors of the rainbow. And so basically, you know, what I was thinking is the light that comes from source, as it comes into each one of these, it's almost like that. It's almost like this crystal. But if you're coming from here, I don't want to confuse anybody, but what I was trying to say is you're just reflecting certain aspects of your whole in this incarnation. And so that's kind of the same, like when you think about any garment and it has a different color, or I think with colors, it's like it's reflecting everything but that color. I don't want to get messed up in that, but basically it's like when you have something that's any red, blue, green, I forget if it's like reflecting or absorbing all the other colors, but it contains all of them, but just within this 3-dimensional world, it's what we see is this, either this reflection of a specified part of it. Does that make sense? So what that means is that, you know, purple, sure, all the colors of the rainbow are in it, but the way that, I think it's like how it's reflected, it basically, we only see this narrow bandwidth of what it fully exists as. Does that make sense? And so when we're talking about us as individuals, it's almost like, I feel like my personal perspective is that we're just reflecting certain parts of our bigger whole in this experience. So when you're thinking about your higher self being these two parts that need to come together, and I'm not saying that maybe, like I said, like maybe you have a soul journey or life contract or soul contract, something that as part of your purpose, it is to rejoin with your partner because you have work to do. That's totally different. But just knowing that you're a whole being. And so you're just like reflecting the more female qualities. And this might not even be true because sometimes people are just associating with a gender that isn't the gender they were born as. So what it just means is, as part of our consciousness here on earth, is that through our individualized experience, we reflect, we basically project, I shouldn't say reflect, but we project certain aspects of the bigger whole, the bigger whole, the bigger whole. And so that's like what people are saying, like when we act out certain type of archetypes, when we specify ourselves to a certain kind of gender, when we have characteristic traits that are a certain type. So you and your twin flame, you're basically, you know, if we just say, for in this instance, as the female that you feel that you associate with female, and as the male part of your twin flame associates with male, that you are just, what did I say, not reflecting, but you're projecting these qualities of the whole that you already are. And so you might come from the same higher self, and you might find that you and your twin flame are reflecting a combination of different, or your, I keep forgetting when you're projecting different characteristic traits of this higher whole. And so it's kind of hard because I think a lot of people are getting into this time where they feel it was almost like this feeling of being incomplete, like your soul's journey to find your twin flame somehow completes you, like you're almost missing other parts of yourself, like, oh, like I don't have these traits. It's not that you don't have them, it's just that for your individual experience and journey, you are projecting a very limited, a more limited bandwidth of certain types of energies that you know, are based on your life experience. So that also works in conjunction with, you know, depending on when you're born, depending on what your sign is, depending on what kind of stuff resonates with you, there's a certain reason. So it might be obviously very important that you have a certain number of qualities that you are projecting as the female energy, as the one maybe born during a certain time of year. And then the male is reflecting or not reflecting, but projecting a certain amount of qualities based on when they were born and what their life's journey is. And it might be true that when you guys come together, it makes a more comprehensive picture or creation of what this whole really encompasses. But it's important to know that you contain all that information. It's almost like what they say when you're isn't it like something like when you're an egg in your mother's womb, like you already contain all this certain genetic and energetic stuff based on, you know what, I'm not even going to represent that because that might make it really confusing, but basically I just thought it was important to make the association that if you understand infinite fractal geometry, that a smaller fraction of something still contains all the whole parts of it, no matter how small you go, that our little individual lives here on earth contain all the same parts as source. It just doesn't feel that way, I think, to some people, because we are only projecting a certain amount of qualities. Or like I was saying, if you think of every part of you that's projected, your personality, how you look, what you like, what you resonate with, all of these are like certain kinds of bandwidths. And so you're only projecting like a certain amount of bandwidth based on you, your personality, like I was saying, your life experience. And so you might find that your twin flame is projecting, you know, the other part of what the whole would be. But even if you don't even think about twin flames and you just think about you as an individual, you're projecting a certain amount of the whole that you are as part of your life experience. And that's part of what I think Source's journey is as the creator. If Source is the creator and we are all linear expressions of that eternal source, it only makes sense that we all as individuals project a certain amount of qualities. You know, it's obviously Source's creation isn't to just have us all be exactly the same and so that we can all project the same amount of things. And what we project has to do with our individual sort of energy's journey through past lives, past experiences, our life now, our experiences now, the sort of conscious collective experience that goes on, you know, with society and with the planet. So all of that has an effect, but I just thought it was really important because people get so, I think, really caught up in wanting to feel whole or feeling like they need something outside of themselves in order to feel complete. And I think sometimes when you're maybe searching for your twin flame, it's that you have some kind of soul contract or part of your soul's journey for you guys to come together is because you have work to do, and that that's what drives your desire to want to be with your twin flame. And there's a lot of that. I think there's a lot of people searching for that. But I think it's important to detach the idea that I'm like, don't, like for people to think that they're somehow incomplete without their twin flame, and it makes that search almost like more the intent behind wanting to be reunited is almost not as clear, the clarity of it, because you're feeling somehow less than on your own. So I thought it was important to just get this message out today so that people could really start to understand that you are whole now. You have everything, but it's your choice to be projecting only certain parts of the whole that you are. And you can make the choice, you know, some people might make the choice that if you come into that understanding, you know, you can decide what do you really need. And I've heard different things too about people and their beliefs on twin flames and whether or not you have to be reunited. I think you'll know. And if it's part of your soul's journey, like I said, or you have some soul contract to be reunited with your twin flame because you have a work to do together, or because it's karmic and you have karmic release, or you have karmic ties, or it's just you know, love that's bringing you together, because you're part of your journey and your experience, or the karma you have is actually for you two to to come together. But in all of that, to understand that you are already whole, and so that you don't need that connection to find a part of yourself. It's really, it's almost like you want that connection to sort of integrate your projections with the projections of your twin flame. But this could also be said about like anybody you're sharing experiences with, anybody that you are sharing anything with, that you are projecting a certain bandwidths of energy and frequency through your being, through your experience and who you are, and that our life experience is about sharing time and space and experiences with people who project different stuff, because it's just, we're all different. So it's very rare that you would find somebody that you're just exactly to the T, exactly the same. That just doesn't happen. But anyway, I just thought it was really important. I came to the conclusion, I was like, whoa, fractal geometry. I'd watched this video. I think it was like the Logos. It was like on Amazon. It was a really good 3-part video, but I remember them showing this like sacred geometry, and I was like, whoa, yeah, I guess you're right. Like you zoom in and then it's like still the same as the whole. And then as I was thinking about this twin flame stuff, and I was like, it doesn't resonate with me that I am somehow not complete without my twin flame. Like I might resonate with the idea that we should be reunited, or that we have karma that we have to clear, or whatever it is. But I know in my being that I'm an already whole being. It's just that this life, because of the physical body that I have, because of, and maybe not even, but me personally, that I project certain frequencies through my body and through my being, based on all my life experiences, and that is really decided on what I need to learn now and what my life experience is today. And so I know I have all of everything else. Like me personally, I don't, like I'm a woman, but I'm not super feminine. Like I tend to be like more tomboyish. I tend to be a bit more I wouldn't say emasculate, but just, I have certain traits that I'm not a super delicate, I'm not a super delicate lady. Like that's not, I'm a woman, and I know that, and I like that, and I project a certain amount of energy around that, but I'm just not super effeminate. And so it's part of, my experience. And I was like, yeah, I don't necessarily feel that I have to project that. Like I can still have my experience knowing that I'm a woman, and there are certain energies with that, but I don't have to project that bandwidth, that frequency as part of my life experience. But I know that it exists. Like I know that frequency exists and it's there. And I think, in past lifetimes, I've lived lifetimes where I have been maybe more feminine. But this particular lifetime, it's about projecting the energy that I am now, which is, me being comfortable with me, which is that I'm not a delicate lady. So I'm not like changing my life to try to be that. But anyway, I just wanted to get this information out. I hope you guys think it's really helpful. Share the information with anybody else, and I will see you guys in my next video.